Bad luck? Good luck? Who can tell? Hello, and welcome to the Basket Case Immersive on up-and-comer Chantel Budinsky. In this episode, we'll take a deep dive into Chantel's insights and experiences to try and understand what's going on between our ears in those moments, so you can add action and awareness to your bag of trick shots next tournament. Think of everything you're about to hear as a jumping off point for you to discover what works for you and your own mental game. So, take it or leave it. Also, the advice you're about to hear is conversational, not clinical. I'm not a mental health professional or a sports psychologist, but I do strongly believe that if you've ever had your mental game fail you, you're not weird. In fact, you're in good company. So let's get ready to flex our mental muscles and go easy on ourselves. Come on, y'all. A huge thank you to Chantel for the great interview. We chatted in 2023 after the Memorial, and months after the interview, she ended up taking down her first DGPT win. So congrats, girl, and man, Basket Case alum out there killing it lately. If you haven't listened to Chantel's episode yet, what are you doing, dude? Go take a listen. I really loved Chantel's experiences with nerves, confidence, self-talk, and emotional attachments to outcomes, because I really have a struggle with that, whether it's a positive emotion or a negative one. Having some kind of emotional attachment can be a strength. It's like Eagle said, how do you use that fire not to burn you, but to cook your food? Positive emotions can fuel our motivation, confidence, and boost our energy levels. But how can we manage the negative emotions and manage when we disappoint ourselves? Or how do we detach emotionally from outcomes in crucial moments so that we can see a 15-footer as a simple 15-footer and not the most pivotal putt we've ever had, and you have to make it or you fail? Here's a clip from Chantel talking about this situation in the episode.
Then I think it was like a 25-foot putt. And I was like, if I just make this, I win. And it's like my first FPO win. And of course I didn't make it because I was just so scared. Like I couldn't control. I was like vibrating. Like, how am I supposed to putt when my whole body is vibrating? I felt this huge pressure, like, okay, you have to do this here and now. And I couldn't. I physically could not do it. Afterwards, I was really upset. Like I was crying, like, oh, if I just made that putt, like I would have won. And it's really not that big of a deal. But in the moment, you feel so like emotionally attached to that one putt, and like you know you could do it, and then you fail and you let yourself down.
After a loss, have you ever felt sad, angry, frustrated? These emotions definitely impact how we behave, practice, and compete in the future, especially if you start ruminating on the negative, replaying the mistakes you missed, the opportunities you squandered, even long after the competition ends. When we get emotionally attached and invested in an imagined outcome, like winning your first pro-level tournament, and then you fail to reach that outcome, it can be devastating. But one of the tricks to not being negatively affected when things don't go your way is summed up in this age-old Chinese parable. The gist of it is, a farmer had this buff freaking horse that planted seeds like a boss. Right before he needs to plant those seeds, this buff jerk runs away. Farmer's neighbors are like, shit, man, that sucks. And he goes, good luck, bad luck, who can tell? Well, that buff mother-chucking horse comes back next day with 2 wild, sexy lady horses. And all of his neighbors come over running like, man, you lucky dog, you're going to have a better season than ever. You got 3 horses now. And you know what he says. The farmer says, good luck, bad luck, who can tell? The farmer gives one of these lady horses to his son. And this filly is nuts. Bucks him off, he breaks his leg. The neighbors come running over. "Oh no, farmer," he says. You know, good luck, bad luck, who can tell? Next day, generals from the army come into town and draft the soldiers. All the neighbors' sons get snatched. Meanwhile, baby Buckdoff gets to stay home with his pops. Neighbors, "You're so lucky." Homeboy, "Good luck, bad luck, who can tell?" Sometimes, like Chantel said, we build the outcomes of an event up so high in our minds. And when we do that, we're limiting the possibilities that exist and lose sight of the lifelong fact that you don't know what will happen. You losing this tournament could be the biggest, most positive turning point in your career. The paths you take afterwards, the places you go next, literally or metaphorically, will spark new storylines, put you in the path of new people in your life, or break your leg. You have no idea what the ultimate outcome of any event is, or whether in the long run that outcome will be net positive or net negative for you. So focusing on that is, in the long run, kind of a waste of energy. I am someone who, in the Big Five personality metric, scores really high on a trait called neuroticism. This means that I feel emotions very deeply, which can absolutely be a strength. It allows me to see insights into complex problems, heightened empathy for others, high levels of excitement and passion. But when I feel negative emotions, boy, do I feel them. In my life in general, I've had to develop some strategies to deal with this because when I don't, I can be a total basket case. Negative emotions can lead to higher muscle tension, lowered energy, and difficulty breathing. Mentally, negative emotions can lead to drops in self-confidence, self-esteem, and enjoyment. The negative impact that losing can have on an athlete and their performance makes it really important to cope with these emotions. The good news? This is not new. And there are strategies of all kinds if you're someone who falls into this situation often. You need to develop a coping response. Routines and strategies that work for you to deal with these emotional disturbances in the moment and before the round. Because the key principle for any athlete is to control the things you can control, but don't waste energy worrying about the things you can't control. One example routine is the quick set routine. This was developed by psychologist Jeff Simmons, and true to its name, it's quick, simple, and involves just 3 steps: a physical, an emotional, and a focus cue. You can do this in 30 seconds before you tee off, before you attempt a putt, or after you get a bad break to refocus and cope with what's happening. Step 1 is the physical cue. Close your eyes, clear your mind, and maintain deep, rhythmic breathing. In through your nose, out through your mouth, and repeat. That is the physical cue. Step 2 is the emotional cue. Imagine a previous tournament win. See yourself making that final putt and recreate the feelings in that moment in detail. Step 3 is the focus cue. Return your focus to the first throw off the tee from that win. Where was it? What was the weather? The sounds you heard? The smells? What are those today? Focus on sensory input. We all know that however meticulous you're planning, shit happens during a round. That is totally out of your control. Those events have the potential to impact your emotional state, distract you from your goals, and push you out of your optimal state of preparedness. However, it's important to remember that things only become distractions if you let them. They do not have to negatively influence your mood if you can learn to let them go and refocus, just like Chantel said.
Just because it's not perfect doesn't mean that it's not good.
These distractions can also be provided by your opponents. I'm surprised we've made it through an entire season of this podcast without this coming up, but wanted to touch on it now. How our opponents and their comments can affect our mental and emotional states during a round. Not only do our own emotional ties to imagined outcomes affect us, but other players do too. Have you ever had an opponent say something to you to get in your head? Have you ever had an opponent do or say something that was completely innocently intended that absolutely devastated your game? This can divert your attention away from your preparation and towards negative memories and self-doubt. If you feel yourself attending to them, it's important to become aware that you have lost your optimal focus and need to refocus quickly. For this week's Listener Send, I was able to chat with Sarah Isaac, a great FPO player in the Phoenix, Arizona area. And incidentally, Sarah was also on Chantel and I's card at the memorial that we talked about in her episode. We all did terrible that round. Here is Sarah and her story.
All right. Well, my name is Sarah Isaac. I am sponsored by the Discraft Underground team and Team Spinners, and I've been playing disc golf now for almost 4 years. My mental game has evolved significantly. I would say, when I first started tournaments, it was just kind of, oh, this is fun. This is a hobby. I didn't realize, it could become a competitive sport. And then I started to realize how competitive it can be and started to take it very seriously pretty quickly. And the nerves initially were always there. I was very nervous, and even to this day, very nervous on the first hole. And so I've had to kind of change a lot of how I approach going into a tournament. So making sure I'm not drinking as much coffee before I go in and getting all the shakes, and trying to listen to calming music. I might listen to Tupac on the weekends, but tournament weekends I'm listening to some Jesus music and calming myself down. But yeah, there's been a couple times I would say in the last year, when I made that switch from advanced to FPO, where it started to get really serious. And I've had a couple experiences where my mental game's really been challenged, from just my own self, but also even from competitors. Sometimes there's some mind games that come in competition. And so, something that kind of sticks out in my mind was the Memorial Championships this last spring. I had gone in, and, it's hard when you just aren't playing the golf you're capable of. And it's really easy to just be like, oh, just get the next shot. Just get the next shot,
And then you have 3 shots left and you've played garbage.
Exactly. And then it's just like, it keeps happening over and over and over again. And I had this kind of lingering injury that's been around for a few months, and I was, not really taking care of it the way I needed to. And so I really had to kind of try to figure out how to reset my expectations of just finishing. And so my boyfriend caddies for me, and he's very calming. And so him and I, in between each hole, would have to just sit and talk through every single shot and say, okay, this is what I'm going to do on this shot, and this is what I'm going to do on this shot, and try to find a way to reset, even though it wasn't really going to plan. And that seemed to help with just taking that time to talk through and have certain things that I'm aiming for, because it's almost similar to kind of like practicing mindfulness, where you're just really present and you're trying to figure out, okay, what, branch am I aiming for in the distance to try to get it to drop right underneath, or what link am I specifically targeting, and really trying to practice
the moment and senses. You're not thinking about future outcomes. You're not thinking about past results.
Right.
Yeah.
And then there was another tournament where it was more kind of the competitor. And I remember I had just switched to FPO, and I'm not going to name any names because, that's besides the point.
Me. No, just kidding.
Right. No, it was not you. I promise you, Chelsea, not at all. But I was playing it. It was pretty neck and neck between a few of us. And I remember there was a competitor who would get right in my peripheral vision, right when I was about to throw every time, and had this timer out to start timing me. And I knew we were really close, and it was like the back 9 of the final round. And I look over as I'm about to throw, and I see this timer. And then every time I would throw, it was like I would hear, oh, that's getting pretty close to your 30 seconds, And so I remember I was just,
and on this strategy.
Right. And there's people that use different strategies. That's not my favorite for sure. But I was just kind of like, okay. And I remember I was just so mad. And it was like 3 or 4 holes. I was looking at my caddy, and I was just like, I'm so mad. Like, this is so toxic, And it started to impact my game. And I realized, after like 3 or 4 holes, if I don't fix me and control what I can control, my mental game, I'm going to lose this tournament. And so I kind of tried to shut everything out. So I put in my headphones. I just stopped like kind of engaging with the group. I just tried to get really, really present with what I was doing. And I was like, no, I'm going to win. And I kind of try to use that frustration and that kind of anger, if you will.
Yeah.
Or
righteous indignation of like,
exactly.
You're doing this like shitty thing, but like, I'm going to beat you. And then
Right.
we'll see who's like, you deserve to win because you're being, I don't know, she's being rude to you.
And I think,
Have the high ground.
in some ways it was a good learning opportunity, right? Like if I could try to put a positive spin on it, it was like, okay, be really mindful of your time and your pace of play. Like that's always a good thing to work on as a player. But I'm also like, I'm not the kind of player that's going to try to use mind games to try to hurt someone else's play. Like if I win, I want it to be because I played the best I possibly could. But in this moment, I had to get present. I had to get present really quick because I only had a few holes left. And so fortunately, I was able to do that. That is not always the case. I would say it's an ongoing battle, but I was able to kind of turn it around by getting, again, just really present, really in the moment. And I was able to win, which was obviously great, and try to,
girl,
use it as a learning opportunity. That was intense.
Yes, that's insane.
Yeah.
I have had somebody, which at the time I didn't even think about it, but it has kind of haunted me of like, girl, you need to get better about like recognizing when somebody is like not being nice to you. I think I just assumed everyone's nice.
Yeah.
And like
that would
this
be
one
great.
time, I know, right? I was warming up putting and I'd been feeling really good about my putt and like making really good putts this whole tournament. And this competitor comes up to me and is like, oh, I just want to fix your putt and make it so you don't stop breaking your wrist. But they were, I don't know, they're usually somebody who's kind of like a mentor. And so, like, coming from her and the power dynamic that we normally have, that wasn't really like a weird thing for her to say, at least in my mind in the moment. But my putting was fucked. It was screwed up the entire round. And like, I just kept thinking about that comment like the whole round. It was like, okay, don't break your wrist or whatever. And it's like, I've never broken my wrist. I don't even break my wrist when I putt. And like, this one comment like devastated my putting for this round. And it was like, I gotta be on the lookout for these like devious like mind games people play because I was not prepared.
Yeah, it's fascinating how impactful other people and other influences can be on our game. And I think that's something that's especially true at higher level competition where some people will do anything to win, and I don't know if it's a mind games thing or people just don't think about what they say or if there is ill intent, but yeah, I've noticed that sometimes I've been affected by things and comments that people have made.
It's interesting to hear that you get nervous because you also are very good about like having your emotions be controlled in a sense where it's like you don't let your emotions rule you in your rounds, which I also really look up to.
You probably wouldn't say that if you saw me after the memorial because I just cried.
Oh, sweetie, I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, it's okay. It happens, you can't play well all the time. And I think I used to be a 2-cup coffee drinker every morning, and I had to switch to 1 cup on tournament days because I would just be shaking profusely. And it would take probably 3 or 4 holes for me to calm down, especially when you start getting into bigger tournaments where you've got cameras and
oh, totally
audience. Like hole 1 at the memorial when you've got a triple
mando and a bunch of drunk people on the balcony.
Right. It's intimidating, and so you have to calm yourself down. And I wouldn't even say I'm confident. I know I've been an athlete my whole life, and I know I am an athlete and I know that I can compete at the highest level, but I do not execute what I believe I'm capable of. And so it's very frustrating and it can be
Right.
defeating at time. And sometimes it's just because I don't practice as much as I should. But if I come across confident, that is excellent because
Oh,
I
girl.
don't always feel that way.
No, totally. You're totally confident. And I really admire the like whatever you're feeling, you are able to like it's like so Kristen Tatar-esque, where it's like she's just I don't know, just like a mask of confidence and she's not like letting things in, it seems like. If something happens, it doesn't like penetrate her.
Yeah. I think
Wow.
these last few tournaments, it's the most emotion I've seen her show.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, she's very stoic.
Mm-hmm.
I I pray one day I can be as good as Kristen
Well,
Tatar.
you're on the path, girl.
I hope so.
I look at you in tournaments and I'm like, man, how do I get to be where I'm not like I just wear my emotions on my sleeve. Like everything I feel and think, I pretty much communicate to people, which is like good and bad, but especially in sports, I do have a hard time of like not letting the little highs and the little lows like affect me as much because I just feel it all very
Well, I
openly
think
and deeply.
well, and I think that's okay though, because I feel like that's who you are, and it's just how can you then leverage that
Yeah.
in your play? And that's where I try to use, okay, how can I use my nerves to improve my performance? Which sounds like a weird thing because
No,
it's
yeah, you're
not going to go
nearsighted.
away,
Yeah.
you
Fly with
know.
those butterflies, girl.
But I do think like with you, I played with you now a few times, and you do have like this just joy and positivity, which is I wish I had that going into tournaments because I don't like I just have these not crippling nerves, but a lot of nerves that I sometimes feel like, gosh, I wish I didn't feel this way. Wish I felt more like happy and excited because I feel like you always are like the Energizer Bunny, and I'm like, I wish I felt like that.
Oh goodness. Yeah, it's
But it's a
totally.
good thing.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for being interested in sharing your story and experience on the podcast. I really appreciate you and way to push through making a tricky situation into a positive outcome. If you have a mental game story and want to be on a basket case immersive, get in touch. I'll either read your send on the show or we can schedule a time to record. You don't have to be a pro, guys. Even if you picked up a disc yesterday, you might have a story or insight that benefits your fellow listeners. As always, sources from the episode are linked in the show notes. Thank you so much for listening. And until next time, full send, everybody. No guts, no glory, no brains, no chains. Goodbye.
You just have to get pregnant again and
No.
figure it out.